Unix actually cost about $160,000 per CPU for commercial license, and that was a kind of a stopping point. But they went to AT&T and said, well, what would happen if we gave out a binary license only? And AT&T thought about that and said, yeah, we can give you a slight discount. And it came down to about $350, and you didn't have to give them the serial number of your CPU. How many of you know the serial number of your laptop? That's what I thought. Slackers. In any case, you didn't have to give them the serial number of your CPU as you took the software from CPU to CPU. And so all of that was good. And Sun Microsystems started showing up at Usenix conferences and talking about what they were doing. Of course, all the Usenix guys says, hey, that's great, give us a source code, we'll help you extend it and stuff. And, oh, I'm sorry. We're not allowed to do that. We're only creating binaries and stuff. And all the people in Usenix would go, spoo! But over time, there was less booing and hissing as other companies like IBM and Hewlett-Packard and Digital started creating their own binary-only versions of Unix. And of course, at the same time, there were these weak, miserable PCs coming out, made out of these weak, miserable Intel chips. And they were running these weak, miserable operating systems like CP/M and and later on this thing that came from this other company. And then there was Apple too. And before that, there weren't any computer stores. Remember? There weren't any computer stores. If there was a computer store, you need an 18-wheel tractor trailer truck, and you need 3-phase power in your house, you need a 20-ton air conditioner. So computer stores only really came about in the age of the beginning microcomputers and binary production software. Now, there was one person who complained about all this, and that was Richard Stallman. He really liked looking at the source code. He really liked improving his stuff. I mean, there was more people than just Richard. But he went out and formed the GNU project, which stands for GNU is not Unix. He wanted it to be open source. He wanted it to be, freely distributable. And he started that. And he really, the first real contribution was, of course, Emacs. And a lot of people said he could have stopped with that. It was a complete operating system onto itself. I remember many years ago, we ported Linux to a Palm Pilot that only had 2 megabytes of main memory. We actually had Linux running on that, but we couldn't put Emacs on that because it was too big. We could only have Vi on that. And then later on, he formed the Free Software Foundation with the goal of having a complete operating system distributable in source code form. Now, that's kind of the history, very briefly, to give you an idea of how we came from the past, and actually this area of binary-only software, I think, is an anomaly in time. It happened because the cost of the hardware was dropping like a rock, but the creation of tailored software was still very expensive. And so by creating mass-produced binary-only software, we were able to reduce the cost of creating a compiler from $100,000 to $39.95 at your local PC store. And that was one way of doing that. And it did help move the computer industry forward. Now, here's a problem with what we call mass-produced software. About the year, I guess it was about 1980, I had a computer system, and I decided I was going to buy some of this mass-produced software. There was a little company very close to my house, and they had about 100 engineers, and they had about 1,000 customers like me, and I paid about $1,000 for the software. It was pretty good. It came on like 2 8-inch floppy disks. And I found a bug in it. And I called up the company, and I got the president of the company on the line. And I says, hi, I'm John Hall, one of your customers. I have the problem. He says, explained it to him. Oh, yeah, I know what that is. And he could say that because he was also the chief programmer. And I kept on and telling him how much I needed to have the fix. He says, well, I think we could fix that this afternoon and test it. And he could say that because he was the head of quality control. And he says, if we do that, we could probably ship it to you overnight because it's not that far. You could have it tomorrow morning. He could say that because he was the head shipping clerk. And sure enough, the next day I got 2 8-inch floppy disks in the mail, stuck them in my PC and everything, well, my computer, and everything went fine. And that was great. And if all 1,000 of their customers had given them 2 problem reports a year, or maybe a problem report request for new functionality, that's 2,000 problem reports coming back to their 100 engineers, 20 problem reports per engineer, no problem. I mean, that could do that, and there's really no problem to that. The problem is, it's now the year 2011. The company has grown, they've doubled the size of engineers, but the real problem is they have 4.5 million customers. Their software now costs $24.95, but when you call them up, you no longer get the president of the company on the phone, nor do you get the chief programmer, nor do you get the shipping clerk. What you get is, please press button number 1 for sales, button number 2 for support. Boop. Then what you get is, music, music. And then you get disconnected, okay? And you don't get the answer which you need, the bug fix which you need to go forward. It's not that these companies don't want to help you. They do. They do value you as a customer, you and the other 4.45 million people, okay? And this is the penalty that we have paid for mass production of software. Now, a lot of times I talk about commodities, commodity software. People talk and say, well, the operating system's a commodity. The Office package is a commodity. Do you know what a commodity is? A commodity is a can of corn. Now you go down to the store, you're standing in the store, there's rows and rows of cans of corn on the shelf, and you're standing in front of those cans of corn and you say, which can of corn should I buy for my family? No, can I buy that can of corn and mix it with that can of corn, or do I have to cook them in 2 separate pots? How many cans of corn do I think I need to buy for the 2 people in my family? You know, do you think that that can of corn is a better can of corn than that can of corn? It's more money. That was 2 cents more. Now, by the time you've asked a couple of these questions and you've got like 2 or 3 grocers standing around you, they call for the police to come and take you away because you are a kook. Because corn is a commodity. Now, all that having been said, what about cars? Aren't cars a commodity? They all have a steering wheel, they all have a gas pedal, most of them anyway. Some have a brake that actually work. They're, from that viewpoint, they're not a commodity, okay? But yet, you don't take a suitcase full of money down to the local car lot and say, here, just give me any car on the parking lot, right? You look at the car, you say, what's the fuel mileage you get? How safe is it? Can it tow my boat, my trailer, whatever? Because a car is not a commodity. Now, I have been in the computer business for 40 years. I've talked with thousands and thousands of customers. And not one single time have I found 2 business problems that were the same. They're all different. And that's why software is not a commodity. Now, oh, what happened there? Okay. So now, sometimes I talk with rooms of business people, sometimes 1,000 people in a room, sometimes 500, and I ask them a few simple questions. I'm going to do it right here. How many of you have ever had a problem with closed source software? Please raise your hand. Keep it up. Don't put it down. Okay. Now, keeping it up, how many of you have actually turned in a problem report on that software? Okay, some people put their hands down. But most of you are business people, you paid money for that, you expected the stupid stuff to work, and so you turned in a problem report. Now, keeping those hands up, how many of you have actually gotten back a well-worded workaround or bug fix for that? Okay, some of you, that's still good. Sometimes I ask this question, you can put your hands down now. You people are persistent. Sometimes I ask this, and out of a room of 1,000 people, when I get to the 3rd one, all the hands in the room go down except maybe one person. I say, Mr. Gates, you don't count. This is a problem. And I actually hedged this a little bit. I said a well-worded workaround or bug fix. The workaround is the software doesn't work the way you think it should. Here's a way you can get around it, including don't use it. And that's a problem. Now, one more question. How many of you have ever had to change the way you do business because the software won't work the way you think it should? And how much did that cost you? That's part of the hidden cost of closed source software. When you change your business, you have to change the business because the software doesn't work the way you think it should. And actually, software as a service, our friend from Microsoft today said that cloud computing is going to make things wonderful because it adds another level of abstraction to this. In reality, it adds another level of obscurity to this. And if you think that trying to get a large company to listen to your problem and fix it is bad now, you haven't seen anything yet until you get to cloud computing, software as a service. Today, there's approximately 1.25 billion computers on the face of the planet, desktop computers. And there's 6.3 billion people. Now, when I started in computing 40 years ago, it was a very small community. We spoke 5 major languages: English, Italian, French, okay? There was a lack of diversity. In fact, the first Unix systems that I brought out based on Berkeley Unix only supported 7-bit ASCII. They couldn't support even the modern day European languages with umlauts and accent graves and things like that. We had to change the operating system to do that, much less support for Chinese characters or any 16-bit or 32-bit languages. So the problem with today is in trying to address the needs of the other 5-point-some-odd billion people, is these people typically don't speak these languages. They have business needs which are different than ours. And therefore, there's going to be more strain than ever on these companies to try and produce software that meets their needs.